Hong Kong just cut off U.S. shipping, and it all comes down to one word: tariffs. As of this week, Hong Kong Post has officially suspended package deliveries to the United States. That's not a delay, that's a full stop. No more boxes shipped by sea starting now, and no more airmail packages after April 27th. Only letters and documents are allowed. And the reason? Washington's decision to end a key trade exemption called de minimis. For years, packages under $800 could enter the U.S. duty-free. It was a quiet trade loophole, especially loved by e-commerce giants like Shein and Temu, who used it to flood the U.S. with ultra-cheap goods. But as of May 2nd, that ends. The U.S. will now slap a massive 120% tariff on any small package from Hong Kong. Later, it jumps to 145%. Hong Kong's response? It won't play middleman. It says it refuses to collect those tariffs on behalf of the U.S., so instead it's pulling the plug on shipping entirely. In their words, this is a stand against what they're calling the U.S.'s unreasonable and bullying acts. But behind this trade standoff is a much deeper political story, and a global shipping system about to feel the shockwaves. So how did we get here? It starts with one loophole, a small line in U.S. trade law called the de minimis rule. Basically, if a package was worth less than $800, it could skip tariffs and fly into the U.S. duty-free. No taxes, no red tape. It was originally designed to help travelers and small businesses, but in the age of fast e-commerce, it became a pipeline. Companies like Shein and Temu weaponized it. They pumped hundreds of millions of packages into the U.S. market dirt cheap. Clothing, gadgets, home goods, all flying under the $800 radar. According to U.S. Customs data, over 1.3 billion packages entered the U.S. under this rule in 2024 alone. Nearly 60% came from China. But then came the crackdown. President Trump, during his second term, took direct aim at the de minimis rule. His administration argued it was being exploited, not just for cheap clothes, but also as a backdoor for illicit products, including fentanyl. Lawmakers and regulators backed him, saying it gave Chinese sellers an unfair edge and dodged inspections. So Trump killed the loophole. In April, he signed an executive order. No more de minimis for China and Hong Kong. All packages, regardless of value, would be taxed. Initially, that meant a 30% tariff, but just days later, he escalated it again. 120% starting May 2nd, jumping to 145% by changed. After months of mass pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, Beijing imposed a sweeping national security law, effectively crushing dissent. The U.S. responded by revoking Hong Kong's special trade status. From that point on, Washington began treating Hong Kong as part of mainland China in economic terms. And now, 4 years later, that status shift is hitting hard. The tariffs that once only targeted mainland goods, they now apply to Hong Kong too. Hong Kong Post called the new tariffs unreasonable and bullying. And instead of collecting duties on America's behalf, something that would have put them in a politically awkward spot, they pulled out entirely. Airmail stops on April 27th. Sea mail already ended. Only documents can be sent. Everything else? Blocked. The fallout is massive. Hong Kong exported over $34.8 billion worth of goods to the U.S. in 2023. That's about 6.5% of its total exports. And now, thousands of businesses, from independent sellers to logistics giants, are scrambling. Anyone who relied on postal shipping and saw Hong Kong as a safe, efficient route into the U.S. now see a target. But here's where it gets deeper. This isn't just about packages, it's about positioning, power, and long-term influence. The U.S. sees this as defending its borders against unfair trade, illicit goods, and foreign control. Trump's administration believes de minimis has become a loophole for China's economic rise, one that needs to be closed if American companies are to stay competitive. China, on the other hand, sees it as a provocation, a strategic chokehold. Chinese officials have blasted the move as shameless and economically meaningless. They accuse the U.S. of using trade policy as a weapon, not just against Beijing, but against China's allies and trade partners like Hong Kong. Hong Kong officials are caught in the middle. Leader John Lee joined Beijing in denouncing the tariffs. In a fiery speech, he called the U.S. move a reckless crackdown and a frenzy of political aggression. The city, he said, will file a complaint to the World Trade Organization, echoing China's own legal pushback. But legal challenges take time. In the short term, the supply chain breaks, and that's bad news for global shipping. Hong Kong's Kwai Chung container terminal is one of the busiest ports in the world. Containers are already piling up, couriers are rerouting, retailers are recalculating margins, and U.S. consumers? They're about to see delays, shortages, and sticker shock. Experts say the entire flow of goods between Asia and the U.S. could be reshaped. Some sellers are opening warehouses inside America to avoid tariffs altogether. Others are shifting exports through Southeast Asia. Logistics companies are racing to adapt, but they can't outpace policy. And here's the wild card: retaliation. China already hiked tariffs on U.S. imports to 125%. More measures could follow. If Beijing decides to pressure American firms operating in Hong Kong or target other loopholes, the standoff could escalate fast. For now, Hong Kong's stance is firm. It won't be the go-between anymore. And that signals a major shift in how the city sees itself, not just as a neutral trade gateway, but as a front line in the U.S.-China economic war. So where does all this leave us? Hong Kong, once a symbol of open trade and neutrality, is now squarely in the middle of the U.S.-China trade battlefield, and that makes it vulnerable. E-commerce, too, is entering a new phase. The days of fast, frictionless, ultra-cheap shipping from Asia to American doorsteps, they're fading. Big players like Shein and Temu might survive. They have U.S. warehouses, logistics networks, and billion-dollar war chests. But small and mid-sized sellers, especially those in Hong Kong who relied on low-cost postal routes, are in trouble. And that pain ripples outward. To American consumers used to $5 phone cases with free shipping, to warehouse workers adjusting to new fulfillment flows, to freight companies rerouting containers across oceans. This isn't just a local issue, it's global realignment. Meanwhile, the politics keep intensifying. Trump's tariff strategy is clear: apply pressure, tighten borders, and choke off economic advantages he believes are undermining U.S. industries. Whether you see that as protectionism or pragmatism, it's working, at least in disrupting the status quo. China's response is just as fierce. With retaliatory tariffs, legal complaints at the WTO, and fiery speeches denouncing U.S. or South Korea get caught in future disputes. What if de minimis restrictions expand beyond China? These aren't just trade questions, they're strategic flashpoints. As we speak, retailers, logistics firms, and foreign governments are all watching Hong Kong's shipping freeze unfold like a case study. What happens when a free port becomes a battleground? What happens when policy becomes punishment?